The American banking system collapses in 1893 and 1907. In 1910, 6 men gather in secrecy to come up with a way to protect the banking system. And in 1913, it comes to fruition. And so, the Federal Reserve was born. This video is going to show how 3 laws that were passed in 1913 changed America forever.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the show. Today, me and Mr. Zig are going to have a discussion about 1913 and the year that changed America. Mr. Zig, how are you?
Doing good, Thomas. How you doing?
I am doing good. Hey, have you ever heard or remember anything or been told about 1913 and the way it changed America today?
No, I haven't.
Well, we got a heck of a video here to go over, and the 3 things that changed, well, 3 laws that went into effect in 1913 that affected every American. And the funny thing is that in this, you're going to hear that even back in 1913, they were out to get the rich. They were out to tax or get as much money as they can from the rich to then turn right around and burn the little man. So we're gonna go over this and check it out and just see. I mean, a little history here about what 1913 changed the country and everything about what we do today. So let's get started here.
In February of 1913, the government gains the right to tax your income. 2 months later, your senators stop answering to state legislatures. By December, a private banking system takes control of the money supply. 3 structural changes to American life in just 10 months. The same Congress passed all 3 of them into law. The same president signed every single one of them. And behind all 3 sat a plan drawn up in secret. A plan crafted 3 years earlier on a private island. 6 men used fake names to get there. 1 carried a borrowed shotgun to disguise what they were doing. This is the story of a single year. Not a war, not a revolution, not a disaster anyone would remember. Just 12 months of legislation that quietly rebuilt the financial architecture of American life. Before 1913, your great-grandparents kept their wages entirely. No withholding taken from their paychecks at the source. No filing deadline hanging over them every spring. The federal government funded itself almost entirely through taxes on imported goods and excise taxes on alcohol and tobacco. According to the IRS's own records, from 1868 until 1913, 90% of all federal revenue came from taxes on liquor, beer, wine, and tobacco. The Form 140 did not exist. The Internal Revenue Service, as we know it, did not exist. For 41 years after the Civil War income tax was repealed in 1872, an American worker's paycheck belonged entirely to that worker's family. Then everything changed.
So from what I've heard is that, like, to support the Civil War for the North, they came up with a tax on people to help support that war. And then 1872, that tax was gone. There was it went back to where the family worked. They kept all of their earnings.
But they kept it another 7 years after the Civil War.
Yeah,
What you're saying, from 1865 to 1872?
1872, there was a tax on all Americans to help support the Civil War.
Okay. But the war was over.
But the war was over, yeah. But it helped to get the cost, even the cost. But once in 1872, okay,
They abolished the tax.
Yes.
Then
we made our money. We paid for the war. Now the tax is done.
Money is yours again. We will
Yes.
not take money out of your income, so to
Yes.
speak.
Yeah. Yeah, so it went back to being, every dollar you earned, you kept.
And the speed of that change is what disturbs me. To understand 1913, you have to understand 1907. In October of that year, the American financial system nearly collapsed. Banks failed across the country, credit evaporated, the stock market cratered, and the federal government had no tools to respond, so the country turned to one man, J.P. Morgan, the single most powerful private banker in the United States, personally organized bailouts, arranged credit lines, and stabilized the system through sheer financial force. He had done the same thing in 1895, bailing out the federal government itself. One man, saving an entire nation's economy. Twice. Congress recognized this was unsustainable. You cannot run the world's largest industrial economy on the goodwill of one banker. So in 1908, they passed the Aldrich-Vreeland Act and created the National Monetary Commission to study banking reform. The commission was chaired by Senator Nelson Aldrich of Rhode Island. Teddy Roosevelt called Aldrich the kingpin of the Republican Party. Journalists called him the boss of the United States. His daughter was married to John D. Rockefeller Jr. Remember that detail? It matters later. For 2 years, Aldrich and his advisors studied European banking systems and toured financial capitals. By the fall of 1910, he was convinced America needed a central bank. But he had no plan. Congress was about to convene, and the political landscape was hostile to anything that looked like it served Wall Street. So on November 22, 1910, Aldrich did something extraordinary. He gathered 5 men at a train terminal in Hoboken, New Jersey. They boarded his private rail car under instructions to use first names only. Their destination was the Jekyll Island Club off the coast of Georgia, a private resort so exclusive that Munsey's magazine had called it the richest, most exclusive, most inaccessible club in the world. The official cover story was a duck hunting trip. Paul Warburg, a partner at the banking firm Kuhn, Loeb and Company, brought a borrowed shotgun to maintain the disguise. He had never shot a duck in his life. A. Piatt Andrew, the assistant treasury secretary, did not even tell his boss where he was going. The attendees were Aldrich, his private secretary Arthur Shelton, Henry Davison, senior partner at J.P. Morgan's firm, Frank Vanderlip, president of National City Bank and closely tied to the Rockefeller interests, A. Piatt Andrew, who had just been appointed assistant treasury secretary, and Paul Warburg, the German-born banker whose knowledge of European central banking made him indispensable. For 9 days, these 6 men worked from early morning until late at night in total seclusion. They ate together, argued together, and rewrote drafts by lamplight. Frank Vanderlip later wrote that it was the most intense period of work he had ever experienced. What emerged was the Aldrich Plan, a blueprint for a central banking system with 15 regional branches. The technical details were sophisticated. The political implications were enormous. The plan that, with modifications, would become the Federal Reserve. Now here is the part where I need to be fair. The American banking system genuinely needed reform. The panics of 1893 and 1907 were devastating. Ordinary families lost everything when banks failed. The currency was inflexible. There was no lender of last resort. Reasonable, intelligent people across the political spectrum wanted a solution. I am not arguing that reform was unnecessary. I am asking a different question. Who designed the solution? And did the designers have the same interests as the people the solution was supposed to protect? Because while these 6 men were crafting their plan on Jekyll Island, something else was happening in Washington. In February 1912, Congress authorized the Peugeot Committee, a subcommittee of the House Banking and Currency Committee formed to investigate what everyone was calling the Money Trust. The investigation was sparked by Congressman Charles Lindbergh Sr., the father of the famous aviator who had been pushing for a probe into Wall Street's concentrated power. The lead counsel was Samuel Untermeyer. The hearings ran from May 1912 through February 1913, and what the committee found was staggering. The final report concluded that a small community of financial leaders had gained control of major manufacturing, transportation, mining, telecommunications, and financial markets across the United States. 5 firms sat at the center: J.P. Morgan and Company, Guaranty Trust, Bankers Trust, First National Bank, National City Bank. These 5 institutions held 341 directorships in 112 corporations. The combined resources under their control totaled more than $22 billion. And here is the detail that should make you sit up straight. The Peugeot report specifically named Paul Warburg among the bankers at the heart of this network, the same Paul Warburg who designed the core features of the Federal Reserve Plan at Jekyll Island. The congressional investigation that exposed the banking cartel created public momentum for reform. And the reform was designed by a member of the cartel. Let that settle for a moment. The disease and the cure came from the same house. This brings us to 1913 itself. The year arrives with 3 legislative changes, each presented as a separate progressive reform, each one sold to the American public on its own merits. But together they formed something none of them could achieve alone. On February 3, 1913, the 16th Amendment was ratified. It had started as a political bluff. In 1909, conservatives in Congress proposed the amendment expecting it would never be ratified by 3/4 of the states. They were wrong. 42 of 48 states ratified it. The amendment gave Congress the power to tax income directly. 2 months later, on April 8, 1913, the 17th Amendment was ratified. This one changed how senators were elected. Before 1913, state legislatures chose their senators. After 1913, senators were elected by popular vote. This sounds like a straightforward expansion of democracy. And it was, on the surface. But it also removed the structural mechanism by which state governments could check federal power. Senators who once answered to state legislatures now needed campaign donors, and campaign donors had addresses on Wall Street. Then came October. The Revenue Act of 1913, also known as the Underwood-Simmons Act, was signed on October 3rd. It imposed a 1% tax on incomes above $3,000 for single filers, $4,000 for married couples. The top rate was 7%, and it only applied to income above $500,000. The first Form 1040 was 4 pages long, 1 page of instructions. And here is the...
I want to stop it for a minute because of the Senate. You know, all of our life we've elected a senator or 2 senators.
Mhm.
Now, could you imagine in today's time if the states got to send the state legislators got to send their senator to the to the federal government, and what could you imagine that in today's time? That that would be scary
It would
because
be very- yes, people would be upset, wouldn't they?
well, of course, you already got it today in elections. Like Illinois, both senators Democrat, and we'll find out how pissed the people here in Illinois is when Durbin steps down. Finally, Durbin has been in Washington D.C. since Ronald Reagan was president.
That was the 80s.
That was the 80s,
Okay.
folks.
So you're talking almost 40 years.
Yes.
Literally.
And that's the best that Illinois could do. Now, Tammy Duckworth, let's face it, she'll be there until the day she dies if that's what she wants to do. Because they're not getting rid of her just because of her status in military and what she did. So she's definitely going to be there until the day she dies. There's no way they're going to vote her out unless they are really pissed up in Chicago. And I don't think you're going to get enough Democrats to do that. But look at the states that you would never, ever, I just don't see you never, ever have a majority in the Senate if the states voted their senators in. You'd never, Republicans would never own. But like they said, that was the way that the states made sure that the federal government was honest and
Mhm.
their voice was in Washington D.C. So, but yeah, that I just found that interesting that before 1913, the states sent their senators, not the popular vote of that state.
Not the people.
Right.
States, yeah.
Right. All right, let's go on.
fact that every American should know. In 1913, the average annual income was roughly $750. The $3,000 exemption meant that fewer than 1 in 100 Americans owed any income tax at all. This was a tax on the wealthy. That was the promise. Remember it. And then December 2 days before Christmas. On December 22, 19...
And so 100, what is this? Like 113,
Years
yeah,
Yes.
113 years
ago.
later. I mean, all through this, we are still, that is the drum that they still beat. We are going to tax the rich. We are going to tax the rich. We are going to tax the rich. And as you can see,
Even back
One-
then, they were doing it.
even back then, that drum was being beat. So 113 years hasn't changed as far as we're going to tax the rich. The thing is that somehow it trickles down to the working man, and then you guys end up paying, and then hey, guess what? We give loopholes to the rich so that they get their fucking money right back. And you being a poor man, you're not getting that luxury because you're going to be paying. So even in 1913, they were beating the drum. It's after the rich. And what did they say? That $3,000 earnings back then, that tax only affected 1 out of every 100 people back then. 1 out of every 100.
1913, the House approved the conference report on the Federal Reserve Act by a vote of 298 to 60. The next day, December 23, the Senate voted 43 to 25. 27 senators were either paired or simply did not vote. According to the US Senate's own historical records, most senators immediately rushed to Union Station to catch trains home for the holidays. A contemporary editorial in The Nation magazine noted that the Christmas deadline was a primary factor in hastening the final vote. The desire to catch a train home for the holidays helped push through the most consequential financial legislation in American history. President Wilson signed the act at 6 o'clock that evening. He used 4 gold pens, then handed one to each of the bill's chief sponsors. The Federal Reserve System, the institution that would come to control American monetary policy for the next century and beyond, was born. I want to be careful here, because you have heard versions of this story before. You have heard it told with ominous music and red string on a corkboard. You have heard it placed next to claims about Illuminati rituals and reptilian bloodlines. And I understand why that makes you want to stop listening. I almost stopped myself. Not because the facts fell apart, they didn't. Every time I tried to debunk a piece of this, I ended up finding a second source confirming it. That is what unsettled me. I wanted this to be exaggerated. I wanted the Jekyll Island meeting to be embellished folklore. It is not. The Jekyll Island meeting is confirmed by the Federal Reserve's own historians. The Pujo Committee findings are in the congressional record. The rate escalation from 1% to 77% in 5 years is in IRS archives. None of this is speculation. All of it is documented. The challenge is not proving it happened. The challenge is getting anyone to care that it did, because the promise broke almost immediately, and the speed of the collapse tells you something about what the promise was worth. In 1913, the top rate was 7%. By 1916, Congress raised it to 15%. By 1917, it climbed again. By 1918, just 5 years after that 4-page form promised to touch fewer than 1% of Americans, the top marginal rate reached 77%, an 11-fold increase in 5 years. The exemption shrank, the taxpayer base expanded, and by 1943, Congress passed the current Tax Payment Act. This is the law that introduced employer withholding. Before 1943, you calculated what you owed and paid it yourself. After 1943, your employer took the money before you ever saw it. Your paycheck arrived already lighter. The architecture was complete. The money that once belonged to your family now passed through federal hands first. You received what remained. Think about what happened in a single generation. Your great-grandparents entered 1913 in a country with no income tax, no central bank, and senators appointed by their state legislators. They exited that year with all 3. Within 5 years, the tax that was supposed to touch only the rich had expanded 11-fold. Within 30 years, the money was taken before workers ever held it. Within 40 years, income tax had become the single largest source of federal revenue. Today, it generates more than $1.5 trillion annually. 4 pages became thousands. 1% became over 37%. A tax on the wealthiest 1% became a tax on virtually every working American. And the men who designed the system? They knew each other. They worked together. They met in secret and denied it for 20 years. The same names appear in the Pujo investigation and on the Jekyll Island guest list. The same Paul Warburg, who is named in the Money Trust report, was appointed to the first Federal Reserve Board by President Wilson. The man the investigation identified as part of the problem was given authority over the solution. What if these three reforms were not separate victories for progressive ideals? What if they were a coordinated restructuring? The income tax created a revenue mechanism that could scale to fund anything. The 17th Amendment removed the state-level check on federal expansion. The Federal Reserve placed control of the money supply in a system designed by private bankers operating behind a governmental facade. Each piece made the others possible. None of them alone would have been sufficient. Together, they built the financial architecture that still governs your life today. I am not telling you what to conclude. I am asking you to look at what is documented and decide for yourself whether the timing is coincidental. Whether it is normal for the same banking network that was being investigated for concentrated financial control to simultaneously design the central banking system meant to address that concentration. Whether a tax that begins at 1% with a promise to affect fewer than 1 in 100 citizens was always intended to stay that small. Whether legislation signed 2 days before Christmas while senators rushed for trains home received the deliberation it deserved. Your great-grandparents saw the first Form 1040. 4 pages, 1 page of instructions. A quiet promise that this would only touch the wealthy. If they could see what it became, what would they say? The form is now thousands of pages. The rate that started at 1% has reached as high as 94% during wartime. The system designed on a private island by 6 men using fake names now controls the money supply of the largest economy on Earth. And every 2 weeks before you ever touch your paycheck, the architecture built in 1913 takes its share first. The question I cannot stop asking is not whether 1913 changed everything. It did. That is not a theory. That is the historical record. The question is whether the promise was ever meant to be kept. Whether only the rich will pay was a principle or a sales pitch. Whether we built something in 1913 that grew beyond anyone's control. Or whether it was always designed to expand, designed to reach further, designed to become so embedded in daily life that we would eventually stop asking how it got there. The buildings of 1913 still stand. The legislation still governs. The question is whether you have ever been told the full story of the year your family's paycheck stopped belonging to your family. Because the documents are public, the dates are verified, the names are on the record, and almost nobody talks about it.
Has been way, I mean, there's just no, it's aggravating to think that in 1913, that there 113 years ago, there was no income tax on anybody. And now look at how shameful that the taxes in this country have become just because of what happened in 1913.
Well, the same thing happened back then, happens today. What do they say? We're gonna tax the rich.
Tax
We're
the
gonna
rich,
tax the rich.
right?
This won't really affect you. They went from 1%, now what are we up to? 36% of your check?
Yeah, well,
Is
could
that
be,
what it is? Or-
could be,
Yeah.
yeah, depending on the tax bracket that
Sure,
you're in.
that you're in,
I mean,
but it's still.
And you know, and so you look at it that, you know, so as years went on, you know, when Ronald Reagan became president, he didn't help with the solution of taxes, because he took, at that time that he went into office, the top 1% were paying 70% of taxes on their income. 70%. And then that dropped down to, I think 34. It's down to 34.
34.
Yeah, at least 32, I think,
Somewhere
maybe.
in that neighborhood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He dropped it down to like 34% though. Because it went from 70 to 50 to like maybe even 38 or 34%. and then under Reagan, what Reagan did was that you know he capped what you paid on Social Security at like $103,000. Anything over that was your money. You didn't have to pay into Social Security anything over $103 or $100,000. And then, so then what he thought about, or what ended up being was that okay, under Ronald Reagan was the first president to tax Social Security. So for him, it's okay to make the system and the funds keep going. We'll tax that fund. But here the wealthy, 1%, well, they're going to drop from 70 to 50 to 34% they're paying out, and we're going to cap it at $100,000. That and anything over, I mean, that right under Ronald Reagan, and we'll do a video on that as well. Is that under Ronald Reagan, this wealth and the New Deal and breaking the unions, this is why we're in the shape that America is in right now. Mm-hmm. Under Reagan. But and for people to say that he was the best president, I disagree. I disagree with that wholeheartedly. But I mean, he did do. But the only thing that I can look back on Reagan's years and say that he did break Russia. He broke that up. Mm-hmm. That was a good thing. But I can't believe, though, it's hard to believe that before 1913, the end of 1913, that people did not pay taxes at all, and they made it.
I was going to say, how did the government function without taxing the people?
They tariffs and taxes on goods that you use, like alcohol, whiskey, beer, stuff like that. They got taxes from that.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah,
gotcha.
There is another.
They didn't take income tax.
No, there was no income.
They just
tax.
taxed.
They taxed products. Yeah.
I got
property. I guess back then, the federal government was in property as well, and they when ships come in, mm-hmm. There was something about boarding with the ships.
Imagine
let me see if I can find the one that I was originally going to show, because he explained what that was going to, or what they were doing, and how they received their money, the federal government. This one I thought did a better job on the three things that were passed. Here we go. But this one here talks a lot about
land sales and miscellaneous fees made up the rest.
Okay, there it is right there.
The official story is simple. Tariffs, excise taxes, and land sales covered everything, but the math doesn't match the buildings. Let me show you what I mean. In 1890, total federal revenue was approximately $403 million. The majority came from customs duties, roughly 57%, with internal excise taxes on alcohol and tobacco contributing another 30%. Land sales and miscellaneous fees made up the rest. That same decade, the federal government funded the completion of multiple transcontinental rail lines, began construction on the Panama Canal infrastructure, built 27 new federal courthouses, and expanded the Navy from 42 ships to 95. The USS Indiana, launched in 1893, cost $3 million. The Pension Building in Washington, completed in 1887, cost $886,000. The Montana State Capitol, finished in 1902, required $485,000 in federal appropriations. The 1893 World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago received $2.5 million in federal funding on top of private investment. Added up across 1 decade and the numbers stop cooperating with the textbook explanation. Consider the scope. Between 1865 and 1913, the federal government constructed infrastructure that rivaled anything built in Europe. State capitals with domes larger than the US Capitol, courthouses with marble imported from Italy, post offices in towns of 3,000 people that featured granite facades and bronze fixtures, custom houses in port cities designed like Roman temples. This wasn't frugality, this was abundance, and the people who kept the books remembered. There was a generation of Americans who worked inside the system before 1913. Clerks and accountants and treasury officials who saw how the money moved. Many lived long enough to be interviewed in the 1930s and 1940s by researchers trying to capture the last first-hand memories of the old economy. Their testimonies were filed in archives. Most were never widely published. Mary Dougherty was born in 1868 in Boston. She worked as a clerk in the U.S. Customs House from 1889 to 1922. In a 1938 interview preserved at the Massachusetts Historical Society, she described the ledger system used to track tariff revenue. When asked if tariffs alone could have funded federal operations, she paused, then said, "There were other columns. We called them special appropriations." The interviewer asked what that meant. She said the records were kept separately and she wasn't permitted to discuss them. John Hastings, a Treasury Department accountant from 1895 to 1931, gave a similar account in a 1941 oral history archived at the Library of Congress. He described reviewing federal expenditure reports in the early 1900s and noticing surpluses that didn't correspond to tariff collections. When he asked his supervisor, he was told those funds came from asset management and were not part of public appropriations. He never saw a full accounting. These weren't conspiracy theorists.
So see, even the shady book work was going on back then.
That's just what I hear.
Yeah.
It's amazing, really. That some things just never have changed.
And how they afforded things that they couldn't afford. They built things that they couldn't afford.
Nancy Pelosi was around then. So, come on now. This is getting shadier by the minute.
They were clerks. They filed receipts, tracked expenditures, and balanced ledgers, and what they described doesn't match the official story we've been taught. The official story says tariffs covered everything. In 1880, tariff revenue was $186 million. In 1900, it was $233 million. In 1910, $333 million. Modest growth over 30 years. But during that same period, federal expenditures ballooned from $268 million in 1880 to $694 million in 1910. The gap widened every year. So where did the money come from? The textbooks say efficiency, economic growth, and careful management, but the buildings say something else. They say there was wealth flowing into federal coffers from sources that were either not publicly reported or were reported under categories that obscured their true origin. Wealth substantial enough to fund construction that still stands today, over a century later, as some of the most durable infrastructure in America. And in 1913, everything changed. The 16th Amendment passed. The federal income tax became law. And within a generation, the people who remembered how it worked before were gone. But the receipts aren't gone. The appropriations records, the customs ledgers, the Treasury reports from 1870 to 1912 are sitting in the National Archives. The testimonies from elderly clerks and accountants are preserved in university libraries and historical societies. The buildings themselves are still standing, physical proof that something funded them. The question isn't whether the government had money before 1913. Clearly it did. The question is where that money came from, and why the people who knew were never asked to explain it in detail before they died. Let me show you a specific case that makes the funding question impossible to ignore. The 1893 World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago. 27 million visitors across 6 months. Over 200 buildings spread across 630 acres. The White City. Official records show the federal government appropriated $2.5 million for the exposition. The total cost of construction, however, was documented at approximately $28 million. Private investors in the city of Chicago covered most of that. But here's where the numbers fracture. The government building alone, a neoclassical structure covering 420,000 square feet, was funded entirely by federal appropriations. According to the official exposition directory published in 1893, construction cost $400,000. The building featured a central dome 120 feet in diameter, Corinthian columns carved from Indiana limestone, and interior halls finished with marble and gold leaf. It was completed in 18 months. For context, the Washington Monument, a simpler obelisk structure, took 36 years to complete and cost $1.2 million. The government building at the White City was exponentially more complex, built in half the time, for a third of the cost, and then demolished 6 months later. The construction contracts are in the archives. I found them because I was looking for something else, tracing appropriations records for the Bureau of Public Buildings. The primary contractor for the government building was George Fuller Company of Chicago. The contract, dated March 1891, specifies materials, labour schedules, and payment terms. What it doesn't specify is the funding source beyond federal appropriation. Treasury records from 1891 show total customs revenue for that year at $219 million. Total federal expenditures were $365 million, meaning the government was already running a deficit of $146 million. Yet somehow an additional
used to that.
$400,000 was allocated for a temporary exhibition building with no permanent federal purpose. That's one building. Across the same decade, similar appropriations appear for projects in multiple cities. The 1901 Pan American Exposition in Buffalo received $500,000 in federal funding. The 1904 Louisiana Purchase Exposition in St. Louis received $5 million. Each time, massive neoclassical structures built quickly, displayed briefly, then demolished completely. And each time, the funding appears in federal ledgers without clear sourcing. But here's the detail that researchers have struggled with since 1910. In that year, a congressional investigation led by Senator Nelson Aldrich examined federal expenditures from 1890 to 1909. The investigation was part of broader debates over monetary policy and the creation of a central banking system. The committee reviewed Treasury records, appropriations bills, and departmental budgets. According to the final report published in 1911, there were discrepancies. The committee
Al
identified
Capone?
approximately
Sure looks like
$340
it,
million
doesn't
in expenditures across the
Well, I was
two-decade
thinking
period
Same
that were
thing.
categorized as internal, improvements, and special appropriations, but lacked detailed sourcing in customs or excise records. The report noted these funds appeared to come from land management receipts and asset liquidation, but did not provide itemized accounting. The report recommended further investigation. No further investigation occurred. The 16th Amendment was ratified 2 years later. There were people who noticed. Albert Gallatin, a Treasury official from 1897 to 1920, gave testimony to the Aldrich Commission in 1910. His testimony, archived at the National Archives, describes a secondary ledger system used by the Treasury Department to track what he called non-tariff revenue. When asked to specify the sources, he stated they included mineral rights on federal land, harbour fees, and lease payments from railroad companies operating on public land grants. Gallatin calculated these sources generated approximately $15 to $20 million annually between 1890 and 1910. Substantial, but nowhere near the $340 million gap the Aldrich Commission identified. When pressed, Gallatin testified that certain revenue streams were classified under administrative discretion and not included in public reports. The Commission asked him to provide documentation. He stated the records were maintained separately by the Office of the Secretary of the Interior and were not part of standard Treasury ledgers. The Commission requested those records. According to the hearing transcripts, the request was referred to the Interior Department. No records were ever produced. Then there's the matter of the gold reserves. In 1890, the US Treasury held approximately $190 million in gold reserves to back the currency. By 1900, despite funding the Spanish-American War and massive infrastructure projects, reserves had grown to $600 million. By 1910, reserves stood at $1.5 billion. The official explanation is economic growth and increased international trade driving gold, inflows through tariff payments. But tariff revenue during that period grew by roughly $100 million, not $1.3 billion. The gold had to come from somewhere. There were elderly miners and land office clerks who remembered Samuel Birch, a Colorado land office administrator from 1883 to 1919, was interviewed in 1942 by a WPA researcher. The interview is preserved at the Denver Public Library. Birch described a system where mining companies paid royalties directly to the federal government for extraction on public lands. He estimated the payments totaled millions annually, but said the accounting was handled through different channels, not the regular books. When the interviewer asked what happened to those payments, Birch said, "They went to Washington. We sent the reports quarterly. I don't know what they did with them after that. Those reports should be in the archives. I've looked. They're not there." Which brings us to 1913 and the question nobody asked loudly enough. If the system was working, if tariffs and excise taxes and land sales were covering everything, why did the federal government suddenly need to tax individual incomes? The official
That is the question there. And it makes you wonder how were they getting all that extra money? And $340 million was the amount that they were bringing in, or I guess it was the amount that was owed, but they wasn't bringing in that much. Didn't they say something like $100 and some million difference? But it's crazy to think that still I'm still stuck on before the end of 1913 nobody paid income tax,
Nobody paid. But,
and yet the country still got by. And like they said, my God, you build a $400,000 structure back in 1891, and just months later tear it down. Wasn't that something?
Well, you'd think there'd be a lot of questions there, wouldn't you?
Oh, yeah.
What's going on here?
Yeah.
But, well, you know what I heard too? Even back then, they wanted you should have bought gold.
Yes.
Because,
Yes.
I mean, they want you to buy gold today, but boy,
Yes.
listen to it back then, even if you had it.
Oh, God.
Ooh.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because back then it wasn't near the price that it is
I
now.
know it. I mean,
Oh, God.
the idea is that they
Yep.
came up with that. Yeah. Ooh.
Yeah. It
Yeah,
just
that is interesting that they built these buildings and then 6 months later they tore them down.
tore them down. Yeah. And that one building in Chicago, World Fair, that it took them less time to build that and have that up than it did the Washington Monument, and it cost less too to have that structure built in less time. 18 months, did they say?
Mhm.
And my God, that was a hell of a structure.
At least the Washington Monument's still there.
Yeah, they
I
didn't tear
don't know
that
about
down.
this thing in Chicago.
Yeah,
I don't know.
no, they
It's
tore it
gone. It's
down.
gone. It's
Yeah.
interesting.
6 months after
That they
the
built
fair.
it, they
Yeah, they tore it down. That is
Hmm.
crazy. That's crazy. But I mean, just amazing how the country, and there's two things that today that you will hear in Washington D.C. and that is, they cry, no one's above the law, and this debt our grandkids aren't going to be able to pay back if we keep going. But yet they keep going. They just keep on spending, buddy. Ain't nobody saying that let's stop this and let's turn this stuff back. Let's stop. I mean, you got people today that is pissed because Nick Shirley's trying to find the fraud. And my God, we're pissed that you're finding it.
When's the last time we had a balanced budget?
Clinton
Bill Clinton.
in the 90s, yeah.
That's 30 years ago.
Yeah. Actually
This is how
had a
early
balanced
this is.
budget.
So
And now we're what, $34 trillion in debt.
I mean, that's
You can
you gotta look in
you
the
know,
mirror and go, how did this happen?
How did this-
something's corruptive is going on here.
well, yeah, because how did that happen? You're $34 trillion in debt. And what moron actually thinks that with way Washington is spending that you're going to pay that back?
Not at this rate.
How in the hell do your grandkids are going to not pay that back? I mean, that is asinine to sit there and ask that we need to lower the deficit. Well, the way you're spending, that's never going to happen.
We're gonna happen, you know, and their whole idea is we'll just go get more money from the public. You know, and sooner or later,
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of interesting how it stopped for now at about 33, 34, 35%.
Right.
You know, I mean, what's gonna stop them from going, well, we'll could take another 10% and we'll get the deficit down in no time.
Yeah.
And then we'll go back. No, don't worry, they'll go back to it.
And here's
Sure they will.
Yeah.
Sure.
So here's what they'll say though, and you know this is coming. So for us to get the deficit down, then we're going to have to tax the rich another 10%. And this is just on the rich. We're just raising the tax from 34 to 44 to 45%
Okay.
on the top earners of anything over, let's say $500,000, $1 million. So anybody earning over that's going to get them. It's going to be a tax on them. And then like morons, the American people are going to say, yeah, you go after the rich. By God, you tax the piss out of them because this is bullshit. Yes, go after the rich. And then I'd give it about a year, 12 months, maybe 15 months. The American people are going to sit back and say, well, wait a minute. How did that hit me? Why am I getting taxed for the tax that you're supposed to put on the rich? Why am I paying that? Well, wait a minute. You gave them a loophole so they turn right around and get that 10% back plus some? Because now I'm paying? How in the fuck did that happen?
Well, how do you think they got rich?
Yeah. So I mean, they're all in bed together.
Mhm.
They're all in bed together. I mean, not one time, and from what was it, 2008 to 2016, Barack Obama was in office, and even had the Democrat Congress, and not one time was Social Security brought up in a serious manner to change and reform Social Security. Not one time. Not one time did they vote, do anything to change that. Now, here in his second term, I guess, now you draw Social Security. I mean, I guess the loophole there is that, you know, Trump says you're not paying taxes on Social Security, but like everything else, yeah, you're paying taxes on it until the end of the year, and then you get a percentage of that back.
Mhm.
So that's the way that works. You know, yeah, you're still paying, but then we'll give you a percentage of it back at the end of the year. Hopefully all of it, but more than likely, no, they got a loophole that they're getting some back, just like on the no tax on overtime. You know, the loophole there is that you don't pay taxes on the 0.5. So if you get time and a half, you're not paying taxes on the half.
The half.
You're paying taxes on the
The
whole.
whole. So that's how no tax on chips. And
So
no
it-
tax
yeah.
on overtime works. Wow.
Now,
Okay.
tips, I don't know how it works. I don't know how
Yeah.
that works. Well, you know, I don't know.
I think I'll ask next time I go out to eat.
Yeah.
I'll ask, how's that taxing on no chips going for you?
Yes. Yeah.
I don't-
See
working for
just
you.
how it goes.
Yeah.
But yeah, because they're not going to not tax you. They've got to tax you. And then with, like I said, when you've got American people bitching that people are trying to find fraud in the system, and they want to go after the people trying to find the fraud instead of getting after the people who are allowing the fraud to happen in the first time, well, that's a whole different stupid right there.
Mhm.
You're dealing with a whole different stupid person right there. So you have that going on, and then the secretly raising your taxes and coming up with new ways to tax you, that's the only way people get elected. And they don't let that know until they get into Washington, D.C. and they say, hey, I got a way to tax people. They'll never know. They'll never know for a while until, and then they'll say, well, wait a minute. Like I say, we'll say we're raising the taxes on the rich. And then in a few months, they'll be paying the tax. We'll give a loophole to the rich so that they get their money back. But not one time, just like it's just like immigration laws, They want that to be there. They want Social Security to be there. That's something that we got to reform Social Security. Yeah, that's a voting tool right there. I'll get elected if I'm going to go in there and fight to reform Social Security. That's their attitude. All politicians' attitude is let's keep that and going, and immigration. Democrats and Republicans both benefit from that. So, yeah, it's something, but I just cannot believe that, that. Can you imagine what your life would be like if you wasn't paying? And in 1943 is when it changed that the government, okay, now we're automatically taking the money out of your checks.
Sure. Yeah. Well, they wanted the people to pay taxes at the start. And then they said, well, I don't know. They probably had trouble getting money from some people.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then they go, well, then we'll go with your employer is
Yes.
going to take it out of your check before you even see your check.
Right.
That way we make sure we got our money.
We got our money.
Because they were probably having problems getting it from the people.
Well, and then
to start.
Then with the war, because 1943, the war would have been going on.
Going on in the middle of the war. Yeah.
So they we need guarantees that we are getting that money.
That's something.
So we're going to tax. We're going to do
Interesting how someone sat down and said, well, we'll just get it from the employer.
Take it from
before it even gets to the consumer.
Right.
To these people. And that way we get ours for sure.
Right.
And we can raise that and we'll still get ours for sure. We don't have to go chasing the public. Hey, you owe me some money.
on the honor system, but I made $2,000 this year, and here's my whatever percentage it was. It never did say. I don't recall. It did say what percentage that they were paying as far as taxes go. But here's my percentage of what I owe you, and I'll just take it to the IRS building or the post office. I don't know how they even paid it back then. Pony Express it to Washington or what? I don't know.
Pony Express didn't last very long.
No,
anyway, but no. But then you think about people who are self-employed that they had to chase down.
Yeah.
It's like some guys who are self-employed. I'm sure some are real honest, and others probably not as honest as you should be.
Right.
Can you just pay me cash under the table? Have you ever heard that term, Tom?
Yeah.
Under the table, cash. What does that mean? Could you explain that to me?
It's a whole different concept today than what it was back then.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it is. But still, it's the same effect, though.
Yes.
Well, sure, I'll stick that right there.
Yeah. But it's amazing though, and like I said, I just don't know the pros and cons of the Senate thing. If it was still, I understand the concept that states kept the government, federal government, in check, but today, as political this country is, everything runs on politics today. Everything that you do has some kind of form of politics in it, and so I just don't know. I just don't think it'd be well. Fuck, I guess there was a lot of years there that Democrats ran the everything to begin with. You go back to the 70s and 80s. My God, that was all Democrat. So I just don't know what that would look like today if the state's legislature sent their senators to Washington, and the pros and cons of that.
Mhm.
But and then the Federal Reserve, the Federal Reserve is kind of that entity that has nothing to do with the federal government, but then does. Because they wanted to make sure, there was one of these that I was watching, that they wanted to make sure that the public thought that it was tied to the federal government. So it is the president of the United States that appoint the chairs. There's like 15, so,
Yeah.
but he gets to appoint those and fire them or do whatever, because I guess there's one under review now today under Trump. Some
Right.
lady that he fired and she sued, and
Yeah.
appellate court, of course, well, she can stay on her job until it goes up it's
Mhm.
everything today is so political. And things are not done by the law. It is done by my feelings. And that's even the judges. I don't like Trump, so by God, I'm voting against him, even though the law says that, yes, Trump's right. But I'm going against him because, by God, I'm a Democrat, and that's what I'm going to do. And I don't like him. So our political or our judicial system is being fractured big time. And once we lose that, then you're going to have chaos. You're going to have all kinds of chaos, and that's exactly what's going on right now. And these educated idiots are sitting back and they're doing this. Just like the judge up in Wisconsin that did her stupid crap with the illegal. Here,
Trying to sneak the illegal out the back door.
go here. Here's how you get out.
He'll think. Oh my God! Yeah.
Yeah. And I still haven't seen. I got to investigate that and see what they finally ended up doing with her. I know she got fired. She got pulled from the bench. But if she's serving any time or not, probably not. I'd say she's probably wearing the bracelet and home certain times, if anything.
Yeah.
If they didn't just say, okay, taking you off of the bench, firing you, that's good enough.
Mhm.
But
Yeah. I would hope that they're teaching the youngins, the ones who are just starting out in
Right.
the workforce, Tom. When they get, they sit there and go, I can make $15 an hour working somewhere.
Mhm.
I work 20, 30 hours, I'm going to make this much money a week. Well, you're really not.
no,
You have to, I would hope somebody sits them down and explains to them, well, this is what they're going to take out of your check.
so
It's going to be this, see, this means this means federal, this means state, this means Social Security. and
right,
then you get what's left, and they may look at you and go, well, that sucks
right,
that they take money out of my, I said, that's why you need to pay attention who's running for office
Right.
and is in control of your taxes, basically.
yeah, and with that, I don't know if it was under Reagan or if it was under Clinton. But one of them decided, as far as Social Security goes, the other thing is that, okay, since the employee paying into it can't keep the fund going, now whatever the employee pays in, then the employer has to match that. So somewhere along the lines, it's really, I don't get it. I don't understand. And Congress has taken the fund. So when the money was going into Social Security and it built up and built up and built up, then Congress decided, you know what, let's take that and put it in the general fund and help pay for all of our perks. And that's the other
That's
reason
another
why.
problem there,
That's
too.
the other reason why Social Security is hurting as bad as it is, because of the simple fact that it's in the general fund.
Yeah, and I think we understand taxes. We understand why you gotta pay. We all want a good policeman, a good fireman, good, water system in
Mhm.
your town and, stuff like that. But when
Right.
it goes to these other perks that you look at and go, you're doing what with the money?
Right.
You're doing this, we all want good roads. You go, well, wait a minute, you're raising my taxes, but the roads in town still suck like they always have.
Right.
I mean, where is the money going that you took more from?
Exactly.
And that's when you start to question, why, that's when you get mad about paying taxes. You're
Well,
like,
yeah.
hey, if my town looks incredible, and I can drive on smooth roads up and down, and the policemen and firemen are happy, and, I got clean water, and, and just the basics. And you're like, well, I don't mind paying them for that. But some of these other perks, you're like, you're going to build a what, where, for
Well, and let's do let's look at it from the reality that is going on now. So the American people, and you got a lot of American people, American citizens that are on the side of the immigrant. So they're out fighting ICE and wanting ICE and protecting the illegal immigrant, the guy that crossed the border illegally and snuck into the country. American citizens are out protecting that guy. The same guy that is being put up into the presidential suite of a Hilton, that American citizen who is out risking their life and getting in front of ICE and impeding ICE and all of this, whose salary can't afford that fucking presidential suite, that illegal immigrant is staying in because their fucking tax dollars is going to pay for that guy to be up there in that presidential suite. And you got American citizens that are out. I just don't understand it. Instead of being pissed and saying, well, where's our tax money going? What are you doing with my tax money? You're taking my tax money and putting illegals up into a presidential suite at the Hilton that I can't afford.
I can't afford to begin with.
I can't afford to stay up in that motherfucker. And now you've got him up in there? And yet
I know, that makes you question. That's when you go,
you cannot,
it's out of control then.
you cannot fix that kind of stupid when American citizens are doing that.
But they'll look at you right in the camera, Tom, and tell you that's what they're doing, and by God, and you know what? And you
Yeah.
should go out in the street, and could you imagine us going out in the street and fighting with guys who have guns and are 3 times better shape than we are?
Yeah.
Getting in their face. No, it's not
Yeah.
for me.
It's
Okay,
not, yeah.
I
It's not
don't
my
agree. I
cup
don't
of tea.
agree with a lot of it, but
Right,
I'm not going to take it to the streets. I'll tell
Yes.
you that.
right. Yeah, and if I did, then it would be to protect the ICE agent. I'd run the fucking illegal down and catch his ass and say, here.
Oh boy. No, we're just shooting that.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. Oh yeah. Okay, well, you know how that's going. But
Yeah,
anyway,
but
yeah. But the tax, I don't mind paying
It's-
taxes when my
it's-
city looks incredibly beautiful. And there's some beautiful cities you go to, and you can tell
yes,
they're spending
They-
their money the right way.
they're
Here, look
spending
at
their
this.
money
The
the
parks
right
look
way.
great. The roads are great, and
yes. Unlike our city, who lies, oh my God, this city, it's nothing but corruption. From the word go. I mean, they, I guess they are though. To be fair, they are starting to do the water system or the drainage system. They're digging up all of Oakland now, or up to
Oh, is that what they're doing down there?
that's
See?
what they're doing.
Oh.
Finally getting the water drainage away, instead of building up on the roads. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
a structure that and a construction that should have been done years ago. But no, they've decided, well, I think we've raised enough taxes property tax and fuel tax and sales tax that now we can, and even lying about taxes. I mean, so they were here a few years ago. They raised our taxes, our fuel tax to, and I believe sales tax to build the bridge across the 72 to go over into Forsyth. Remember that?
The road to nowhere.
The road to nowhere.
We call
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Because that
The
road
bridge,
literally-
the bridge
to
doesn't
nowhere,
exist.
It doesn't
Yeah.
exist.
Yeah, but they
money-
raised the
Money
taxes.
went somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
And our corrupt city council decided after they raised the tax, they decided, okay, now let's go to the city council of Forsyth and say that whatever buildings or whatever businesses are built on your side, then you will share that percentage of that revenue taxes with us to pay for this. And they said, you go to hell, we're keeping our own taxes. So then Decatur says, well, then the hell with you, we're not going to build the
We
bridge,
didn't get the bridge.
but we're going to keep the taxes.
Taxes.
We're going to keep, we'll buy squad cars and stuff like that. So that just, I mean,
We got hybrid buses.
hybrid buses, yes,
We got hybrid buses.
yes,
That's the last thing I know the city bought. The city bought.
yeah,
Okay, I'm sure they bought other things, but
yeah.
No.
But,
it's,
okay, we're getting
I'm
off
sorry,
topic here with the, so it's aggravating. I know paying taxes is aggravating because it's you're paying taxes on the paying taxes, and I'm taxed to pay my tax, and now, you know, and it's just like you, and then the look of what's going on, and then now and then it's always the same fucking argument. We're going to raise taxes on the rich, and somehow the middle class and lower class gets the fucking by it.
and what's funny, like you said, it was the same argument they had
They
back in
had
1913. We're gonna,
Yeah.
when you hear that guy talking,
This is only going to affect 1 out of 100 people will have to pay taxes.
Some things never change.
Yes,
I'm telling you.
yeah, yeah. And then of course, then you think, well, did our politicians say, well, hell, they used it back in those days? Well, why let it die? We can still use it.
Somebody's been studying history.
Yes.
It's like, hey,
Uh,
we can do this.
Yes, heck yeah. So, but well, all right, mister. I just
All right.
it's aggravating. I know American people are fed up with the taxes and nothing getting done other than we know one thing that is getting done. Illegals are living like kings here in Illinois and in the country because of our taxes, because of your taxes. So whenever you want to be a moron and go out and protect the illegals that is living up into a presidential suite that you can't afford, then just, hey, your taxes are hard at work. So, all right, everybody. Well, the rant is over, and good day and have a blessed day. Talk at you later.